staring at him, and he says, "No, that was all part of the plan."
Oh, always a corker. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Digital Download. This week, we're going to talk about how to understand those you communicate with and effectively communicate in the way that they need to receive information. We strive to make the digital download an interactive experience, so audience participation is highly encouraged. But first, let's go around and have some introductions. Tim, would you kick us off?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Rob. My name is Tim Hughes, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. Based in London, I am.
Excellent.
It's a bit like Will I Am.
Yes.
Adam.
I'm also co-founder of DLA Ignite, but I'm not CEO. So I'm Tim's business partner, and I'm based outside of London.
Excellent. Thank you. Lenwood.
Hello, I'm Lenwood Ross. I'm the founder and CEO of Accelerate. I'm based in New York City and a partner of DLA Ignite.
Jensen.
Hi, I'm Jensen Abbott. I work for Supero and I'm a proud partner of DLA Ignite.
Welcome, Jensen. Good to see you making a regular habit of this.
Thank you for having me.
A regular Abbott of this.
Alex.
Hello, folks. Alex Abbott, founder of Supero, based outside of London in a little town called Leighton Buzzard in Bedfordshire in the UK, and also a proud partner of DLA Ignite.
Excellent. Well,
is that name like from the Middle Ages? Because you guys got old Leighton Buzzard.
Leighton Buzzard.
Sounds better in an English accent, though.
There was actually a punk group back in the early 80s called the Leighton Buzzards, Lenwood.
Wow.
That sounds about right. Tracy.
Hello, everyone. Tracy Borison, founder and CEO of TLB Coaching and Events. A very proud Canadian partner of DLA Ignite.
Welcome. And myself, I'm Rob Durant, founder of Flywheel Results. We're based just outside of Boston and also a proud DLA Ignite partner. This week on the Digital Download, we have a very special guest. We are going to be speaking with Sarah. I always pause, and it's as straightforward as can get. Sarah Filipiak. She is going to help us explore this topic. She is an accomplished sales enablement leader, equipping and empowering global sales teams. Sarah works with sales professionals to help them deliver compelling revenue strategies. But rather than me telling you all about Sarah, let's bring her on so that she can tell us all about Sarah. Good morning, Sarah. Welcome.
Hey, thanks, guys, for having me.
Welcome, Sarah. Did you pronounce your name right?
I was going to say it, Rob. Gold star. No one ever does that.
Well, there was a cheat. If you go to your LinkedIn page, you've done the courtesy of pronouncing it for us.
I do try and demystify the process if I can. Yes.
There you go.
But
Sarah, would you give us a little background about yourself, please?
Of course. Absolutely. Hi, I'm Sarah Filipiak. I am the founder and the chief enablement officer of Flipped Modern Enablement. Can't say it now. You would think that the hardest part is the last name, guys, but Flipped Modern Enablement. And yes, it's a pun on my last name because Filipiak, my husband's last name, is so dang hard. I have been serving go-to-market teams, having been a founder of my own startups, having scaled the likes and built the enablement strategy for the likes of Wayfair, Airbnb, Recurly Coupa, and most recently Bamboo Rose. My passion is really unlocking the potential in each of the individual roles that I'm able to help. So Thank you guys so much for having me. It's been a real joy to connect with you in real life, Rob, and can't wait to meet the rest of the crew.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being here. So, Sarah, this week we're going to talk about communication. And when you and I first connected, we had an instant bond. We had so many of the same beliefs around communication. In fact, I have a story that's probably not appropriate for these airwaves that we really had a good laugh at. But
It's Friday.
I'll just say this, 2 words.
That's
Big
so
Sean.
cryptic.
You can't leave us hanging like that. I have a feeling there is an edition about to be dropped. So,
Big Sean. If you know the rapper, you know his most famous song, you'll understand why the rest of the story is not appropriate for public airways.
Okay.
So, Sarah, tell us a little bit about your philosophy around communication, if you would.
Absolutely.
Share some insights there.
sure. So, a lot of that starts with kind of my backstory. So, believe it or not, guys, if we were having this conversation about 20 some years ago, never would have happened. Not only painfully shy, but also, unbeknownst to me at the time, I had a neurodivergency that really inhibited the way I was able to understand just basic social cues. For a long time in my upbringing, I always knew I was just a little bit different, right? But I never really understood why. Why were people a foreign language to me? Fast forward, I go into college for all things, especially as a Midwestern girl, painfully shy, so much so I would eat lunch in a bathroom stall in high school. True story. What in the world am I doing singing opera, by the way? No clue. Apparently, I used to think that I could sing like this with a sheet of paper in front of my face, but I guess that's not how you can really do it. So, ended up falling in love with something called pedagogy. Anyone ever heard the term before?
Sure.
Really? I have never heard of someone that has actually understood the term pedagogy. So,
Can I share a quick story about that term?
go for it.
So I was teaching geometry in high school. I had transitioned from industry to education, and I'm in a room full of teachers in our meeting. And for a month, I've been hearing that word and hearing that word. I finally got up in the middle of the meeting, walked to the corner of the room where there are shelves of dictionaries, looked up the word, and found out, oh, it's the art and science of teaching. Guys, why didn't you just say that? Sorry, go on.
No. And it's true. So pedagogy stems from the original Greek term. If you remember from Greek, if you've ever taken Greek history, so the agoge, that is meant to be the basically the collective of scholars, and where they would actually, so they believed that education wasn't just what we would consider this day and age. I'm going to sit in a classroom and I'm going to talk at you for the next 8 hours of the day. That's just not what modern education, in my opinion, not necessarily the most effective thing. So pedagogy is the science, the understanding, the unique way of how an individual learner thinks, acts, behaves, motivates, and shapes curricula unique to that individual. So think of it like, yes, education, but also psychology as well as communications, and kind of bundle all of that together. So that's what I ended up studying in college. I became fascinated. I accidentally stumbled into it because it was one of my electives in college. And I thought to myself, wow, okay. For the longest time, I thought, A, I'm weird. B, I didn't know that I was necessarily intelligent. And it took an awful lot for me to kind of go through that process and demystify, well, if I feel unique about the way that I experience the world through my 2 eyeballs, because I've never looked out of anybody else's eyeballs other than my own, maybe other people feel the same way. Maybe other people feel that they don't necessarily understand all of what it takes to unlock their uniqueness, their unique voice, their potential. So fast forward a little bit, opera singing pedagogue in the middle of very rural Midwest. Not a lot of people knew what to do with that. So naturally, I accidentally stumbled into sales, and it changed the trajectory of my career, having now done that for about 20 years. So that's my backstory.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So communication. Aren't we all just listening for our own turn to speak?
Yes.
We're not talking about just on this show, Rob.
I've said more than once, we just throw elbows. Don't wait.
Yeah, and that's just it. Kind of back to that analogy, think about when's the last time that you looked out of Lenwood's eyeballs or Tracy's or anyone other than yourself, right? We are preconditioned. It is biology. We've only ever looked out of our own lens, and that is what shapes your reality. Our job as professional human communicators and influencers is to really understand, what does the world look like outside of my own lens, right? That's what I think is so critically important in what we do professionally. And I think that that's what enablement, or at least my definition of enablement, I know it's still an emerging field and there's an awful lot of definitions out there. But what I believe holistic enablement is it's the meeting of the minds. Finding a way to speak a common language and be able to accelerate time to value through the various lenses and the various stakeholders within a given process. And how are we going to be able to exploit that for a win-win solution all the way around? That might have been a bit of an altruistic answer, but it's true. So
I love that kind of stuff.
well, hey, look, you've got one life, and if you're not on fire by what you do every single day, you might be doing it wrong. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
So how can we be doing it better?
How could we be doing it better? I think that's just it. Step one is acknowledgement, right? The first step to any recovery program is, how do we zoom out? So once you first acknowledge the problem that, okay, well, maybe I am stuck just waiting for, when do I get my turn to open my mouth, right? And let's face it, the reason we're all so quick to want to open our mouth first is because that's what we're familiar with. It's our comfort zone, right? We haven't done anything other than just wait for our turn to speak. So the way that we relate to the world is through communicating our truth. So the very first step is take a step back and start to put yourself in the shoes of the person that you're trying to communicate with. So there's a little bit more, obviously, to pedagogy than just that as a primer. But it's also, how do you start to identify the various people clues? What do you see on the surface that gives you a little bit of an instinctive feeling for who that person might be internally? What do they not necessarily show you on the surface? How can you uncover their core motivators so that you can truly meet that person where they're at? That's how you communicate with someone. But first starts by being able to observe those people clues and get a kind of a sense on where their core motivations really lie. And then how do you build kind of an ecosystem, a world around that person, so that you can truly unlock what it is that they're looking to accomplish.
So you're experienced and an expert at this. I'm a novice. So I'm having a conversation with you for the first time. What are the things that I should be looking out for that give me a pointer as to how I can best engage you? Because I tend to think that we're all of us quite knowledgeable about our specialist subjects. And clearly, I don't need to listen to your problem before I can diagnose what the solution is, because I know what the solution is, because I'm an expert at this and it's a solution for everybody. Absolutely. So it's very difficult to divorce yourself from that. I'm waiting, as you said, for the opportunity to shoehorn in my point of view. So what should I be looking at in you or anyone?
Awesome question. So a couple of different ways I could approach this answer. So one is, have you heard of a system called DISC? It's a very simple based system developed by Carl Jung. And the theory is to identify the 4 primary drivers of human behavior. That's one of the things that I think is a really easy system for anyone to be able to latch onto. It gives you a high level diagnosis of who this person might be just based on what you observe on the surface. And it's through understanding some of their communication habits that you can start to understand, okay, well, why is this person communicating the way that they are? And that starts to give you kind of a peek behind the curtain so that you can uncover and tap into those motivations. So DISC, for those of you that aren't familiar, D stands for dominance, direct. These are going to be very take charge, no nonsense individuals. And they typically, respond to any given statement with 2 to 3 word answers. Clearly, I don't always lead with D, energy. I stands for intrapersonal. These are more gregarious personality types. They're going to have an awful lot of color and a lot of creativity in the way that they communicate. I do have a tendency when I teach to lead with I, energy. S is stability, stabilization. These I like to describe as mellow yellow. These are the people that really just want universal harmony. They want to take the chaos out of any given circumstance and just have order. So these are people that aren't necessarily going to speak first or the loudest. Incredibly empathetic. These are peacekeepers by nature. And then C stands for cautious, contemplative, a bit more of your engineering type of temperament. They're going to take everything in very cerebrally based, and they're going to crunch any type of situation, slice and dice the data internally, and they're going to share an answer only after they've taken a plethora of time to be able to come up with the exact right answer. So when you think about those 4 drivers, and I'm not saying that anyone here is all D, all I, all S, all C. That's just not how it works. But the way we communicate, we do have a tendency to bring some of those clues to the surface. I think that all D, all I, all S, all C, that's a caricature. So if you've seen the movie Legally Blonde, Elle Woods, she's all I. If you have seen, oh goodness, there's so many different pop culture examples, but you get the point. No one of us is a caricature. We're a 3-dimensional human being. So what I try and do is I try and demystify that process and give people a universal understanding of where are different people coming from. When you start to understand those behavioral clues, you can start to ask yourself, well, why would someone choose to communicate that way? Why are they elevating this tendency over a different one in their temperament? And when you understand those core motivators, that's truly where you can forge a path where you're lowering someone's guard. You're earning the trust. You're coming from a place of contribution. The second part of the answer I wanted to give you, Adam, is it's really abandoning your own agenda. The minute you start thinking that, hey, I'm a salesperson and clearly I know exactly what it is that you need and you'd be a fool not to buy from me. That's very I, me. I've looked only out of my own 2 eyeballs energy. When we do that, the guard shoots right up. It is instinctive. We feel that as the recipient of that message. That's why cold calling, the way that it's typically done, is a spray and pray approach. It's just entirely ineffective. You need to be able to put yourself in the lens of the person that you're trying to communicate with and think through, wow, well, if I were them and I were receiving an email where essentially you're telling me I'd be nuts, absolutely foolish, or my career wouldn't be made unless I buy something that you're selling me. That comes from a very external sense of motivation, and it's felt by the customer. It immediately discredits any type of true thought leadership, any true sincerity that someone might have in consulting to my best interest. So that would be the other point that I would make is it really comes down to, and not only do we fundamentally have to understand the person that we're communicating with, secondarily, and probably even more importantly, you have to understand yourself. What are you leading with? What does your conscious text, what does your subtext, your subconscious text, the way you communicate information, what is that saying about you? When you put all of that together, that's the magic. That's the alchemy. It's when you can abandon your agenda, have a true meeting of the minds, tap into somebody else in the way that they think, behave, act, and motivate, and say, wow, if I were them, if I'm a CEO and I'm carrying a great deal of burden and we're in an inflationary market and there's no way for me to truly be able to control all of these extraneous factors, if I think now through their lens from a place of empathy rather than a sense of selfishness, I'm like, holy cow, this person's carrying an awful lot. They are chiefly responsible for the well-being of all of these various dynamics that they can't control. There might be a reason why they're, very quick and the guard shoots right up, and maybe they're carrying a multitude of factors that are truly impacting not just the well-being of their company, their internal stakeholders, all of their external stakeholders that invest in their company. But my goodness, if I'm that person, maybe I'm not sleeping well at night. Maybe I'm also thinking that my job is hanging by a thread. Maybe my spouse and my children feel that about me. It's then and only then when you can zoom out abandon your lens for a minute and really think through, what is this person really experiencing? This is why when I'm asked to build a persona matrix, I've got to be honest with you, it's kind of a self-serving tool, in my opinion. It's a couple bullet points of, oh, this is what I need to know if I'm going to be a CEO, or if I'm going to sell to a CFO, or how do I need to speak the language of a CTO? Well, all that's fine and good, but you're a caricature again. You're no longer a person. We need to put the person back in persona.
You said something really interesting then about how you have to abandon your own agenda in order to really listen to what somebody's saying. But my experience of salespeople is that they have a very binary existence. You've got a call or an interaction with somebody which you have to try to convert or move to the next stage.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a manager that's driving you hard, that you're having to explain yourself. So why was this call unsuccessful? Why didn't you achieve this? Why are you not going to make your number? Particularly because lots of salespeople are struggling under the weight of the leads that they are used to getting are now of low quality. Mm-hmm. The outreach tools at their disposal that they have experience of, cold calling, cold emailing, going to events and kind of trying to cozy up to somebody and shake their hand, all of those things are less effective or completely ineffective these days. So how does the salesperson abandon their agenda when their agenda is so front and center of their life and the problems that they're facing today?
My goodness, that is such a big question to unpack there. All right, so you ready for it? Number one, and again, this is Sarah on her soapbox, so I apologize in advance, but in my opinion, we've got it backwards. There's a reason why I think that modern sales in so many capacities is broken. And if you look at what the average tenure is of a SaaS seller, would it shock anyone to know that the average is about 9 months? That the average person that is coming into an organization that is chiefly responsible for driving quota and being able to propel the revenue engine, we're churning people. Guys, that is a fundamental issue. What in the world are you doing if you're building a go-to-market revenue engine? If the people that you're relying on to build said revenue engine, you're just kind of bringing them in, you're churning through them as quickly as you possibly can, and then you're burning them right out. We're treating people like commodities. And to your point, Adam, it's just that. We're coming from a place of such selfish intent and such, oh my goodness, I have to hit this number. If I don't hit this number, I'm not going to be able to have the income necessary to provide for my family. We have this suffocating culture where we've empowered the wrong behaviors. And more often than not, companies are incentivizing the wrong behaviors.
Right.
I can't wave a magic wand and fix that overnight. What I can do is I can coach to the right systematic infrastructure and the right ethics and slowly build adoption throughout an organization amongst the sellers, amongst the sales leaders, and slowly prove my concept that the tide does have to turn. But again, I'm a voice of one in a really big sea, billions and billions and billions of dollars right now in this industry. And candidly, I'm saying that more often than not, we're doing it backwards. So the way that I believe enablement really needs to be set up is it's kind of back when I opened my first couple startups. The very first thing I would do, guys, long before I ever opened the doors to a company, I had a business plan. I'm sorry, no bank is going to invest in me, this really quirky kid from the Midwest at what, early 20s? They're not going to invest in me unless I have a solid business plan. I've done my market research. I understand my competitive differentiators. I understand exactly who my target customer is, how they think, act, behave, and motivate, and what is it going to take for me to build that relationship over time. And then what's my growth strategy? No investment banker was going to invest in me unless I had a pro forma analysis of how was I going to take this concept and then build over time to meet and exceed that financial projection. So what I'm saying is we have to start with the growth strategy in mind. And more often than not, companies were prioritizing a really cool, snazzy gizmo or a gadget. We're so focused on the product that we forget about why the product is relevant in the first place. I'm sorry. I know that we've only been friends for 20 minutes, but candidly, that's been my theory, is we have so many product pushers you have to buy this. This is like the coolest thing you're ever going to see. Great. You're beating me down though as your customer. The more you approach me and say, this is the coolest thing, this is going to make your career, I'm tuning out.
How if I've got a question. So I think everyone on this call, on the panel anyway, at least, agrees with you. You are talking the same language that we all talk. But how do you convince a CEO? How do you convince the CSO or the CRO or the CMO that their entire kind of mental model is based on a sales funnel and approach that is broken?
Well, probably not the best way to do it, candidly. But in case you can't tell, I've got a little bit of a big mouth and a few opinions. I did start this episode by sharing with you I am neurodivergent. So that is actually something that I didn't understand until fairly recently. I have a tendency to just say exactly what I think. So I try and do that, obviously, with tact and with empathy. So I think the way to go about a transformative change, and that's really where we need to start having the conversation, right? Is we need to say, look, what we've been doing before, is this working? As an enablement leader, my job is to take a look at not just the quantifiable data. Everyone's, still fixated on, in order to prove success, it has to be quantified. We have to take a look at the qualitative data as well. Some of the soft metrics, the net promoter score. Are people truly happy? Do they feel comfortable? Do they feel seen, heard, valued, empowered to do their job? Do they feel well equipped? Well, then you look at the quantifiable data and you say, nope, we've got a churn machine. And it's right there. When we can start to actually prove, the qualitative and the quantifiable data, and it works together, and we start to realize that a lot of these things, these systemic issues, this hypothesis I have in my head, all of it makes sense. We don't have people that are loyal to this company. They're not building their careers with us. We are constantly trying to throw spaghetti at the walls and hope to see what sticks. We don't have any type of plug and play systematic way of plugging a new seller into an organization and saying, here, this is exactly what you need to do to demystify the process and to get you into momentum and achieve your revenue target as quickly as possible. So when you are able to go to a CMO, a CFO, and you can just say that, hey, a lot of these behaviors, look, I'm here on the job. Candidly, I'm only 30 days on the job at my new role. And my job is essentially to act as a really good internal auditor for the first 30, 60, 90 days and evaluate what's working, what's not working. I can't be effective in my role unless I know the good, the bad, the ugly. So I'm trying to peel back all of the layers to really understand what is working well for this company and what's potentially holding them back. You bring those hypotheses. You make sure that you're gaining favor and that you're actually seeing and hearing the people that you're looking to build favor with. I'm not the kind of person that it's not lip service with me. When I take the time to really want to hear what's going on through the eyes of one of our individual contributors, an SDR, a sales director, an account manager, if I want to know what's going on in professional services, if I want to hear exactly what a day in the life is like for one of our VPs that's responsible for a territory, I'm going to take the time to really get to know them. I'm going to ask them all the questions. I want to make sure that they're fully seen, heard, valued. You bring the qualifiable and the quantifiable data together. You share the hypothesis and you make the recommendation necessary that if I'm right, and again, fire me if I'm not, but if I'm right, and we've got these behaviors and we're seeing that the average seller, it's taking them 9 to 12 months just to get into ramp, but then we're hemorrhaging that seller after 9 months anyways. We are only ever underperforming as an organization. We never truly hit potential. We never hit a stride. And in fact, every single time you break and break and break, you're only weakening your foundation. So my hypothesis is if I can accelerate time to value and ramp the right talent, maybe it's also that we didn't have the right talent in the first place. I mean, that's worth taking a look at. When's the last time we took a look at our ideal candidate profile to make sure, are we bringing in the right people with the right behaviors? They're going to feel confident to run through that metaphorical brick wall every single day and accelerate on their revenue targets. That has to be looked at. So I put together all of these hypotheses. and I say, this is what the data and the NPS and what the field tells me. Based on this, if I'm right, we should be able to find a better quality, better quality of candidate. Sorry, I can't talk today. First thing in the morning. We have to make sure we've got the right people in the seats in the first place. Are they bought in? Are they mission driven? Are they purposeful? The whole will skill quadrant. And again, that's qualifiable. A lot of people don't take the time to think about the importance of quality and not just quantity, right? So are we have the right people? What's it going to take to get them into excellence as quickly as possible and unlock their potential? And then are all of the departments within a given process, are we all speaking one universal language, or are we getting in our own way? Are we creating silos where they don't need to be silos? Are we creating friction for the sake of friction? Or are we creating holistic enablement across the organization where every single person within said organization knows we're all speaking one universal language and we know how to play within one another, so it no longer becomes a really jarring. Have you ever listened to an orchestra being tuned? I'm a former opera singer, so I've listened to millions.
Adam, have you ever heard an orchestra being tuned?
A few.
Chaos, right? To hear all of these people just going.
There's nothing like a C, is there?
It's a sea of chaos. But if we can teach people how to tune the orchestra on the same note, all at the same time, and truly unlock that alchemy across the board, game changer, in my opinion. So I feel like I just talked way too much, guys, and I apologize.
Sarah,
No.
Sarah, thank you so much. That's
Awesome.
excellent. No,
Loved it.
We're here to learn, and we're learning, and so the audience. So, Tracy, you've got a question, haven't you?
I do have a question, because this is the digital download. So we do a lot of digital talking. And when we're talking about like digital communication, I don't know if everybody saw my post yesterday, but there's some bad stuff out there. So I'm wondering, Sarah, if there's any specific tips that you have from, I mean, like, I feel like it's the same basic rules for digital communication than in-person communication, but where are some of the roadblocks, especially for sales, that you see people run up against when it comes to digital communication versus what people might call normal communication?
You've got such an awesome question, Tracy. And I've got to be honest with you that, again, so many different veins in which I could take this answer. In my opinion, we are and I hate to say this on a podcast called The Digital Download, so please forgive me in advance. But I also feel that technology is starting to undo a little bit of the fabric that is vital within interpersonal human communication. We're kind of breaking ourselves. The more reliant we're becoming on efficiency and technology, we're starting to starve the human element out. Do you know how many people are starting to put all over LinkedIn that, oh my goodness, Chat GPT, they're coming for my job? Well, no, sorry. If that's really true, well then, wow, we really didn't hold a lot of value in the first place, did we? So it's those people that are saying that we might be losing our jobs to robots that might not have had the skill in the first place to be in this profession. And I'm sorry, that's a very big statement again for me to make. So I apologize in advance. Well, I guess retroactively, that's not in advance anymore. What I would say though, is we really have to become mindful. There's that word. Like, do mindful and technology go together? I think they absolutely have to in this day and age, because the more we're becoming a culture of, speed to market and how fast can I click one button to be able to automate anything that I need, the more humanity needs to go into that, in my opinion. Otherwise, we are going to continue to commoditize ourselves. Sales is already highly transactional. It is already hyper commoditized, right? We need the sellers that are most effective are the ones that remain consultative, right? It's those that are able to zoom out of your own lens, zoom into what the need is of the company, the person, the collective of people, because let's face it, we're not just selling to one person anymore, are we? We're selling to a collection of individuals with all different thoughts, behaviors, motivations for wanting to take action or not take action on something. Inaction is a choice as well. We need to start thinking through the lens of who are all of these people, what do they care about, and how do we make sure that when we do communicate, even if it's a digital means, how do we still remain in touch with who that person is? If you know me, you'll know that a lot of the way I choose to communicate, I use technology as a way to remain human, to remain three-dimensional. If COVID taught us anything, I think it taught us a lot. We immediately became locked and siloed ourselves within the confines of our own home. We had to rely on technology as a way to keep the world running, keep our companies running, right? But so much of that came at a cost, and we lost that connection with one another. So I think one of the ways that I choose to communicate is I leverage as much three-dimensional product as I possibly can. I leverage video. I leverage voice text. I find ways so that people can still hear the nuance in which I'm choosing to communicate, because I think that words hold so much power, but content without context is garbage. And what an awful lot of black and white text is a whole bunch of content. But how many times have we been lost in communication because we've read a whole bunch of words in an email and we immediately misinterpret the tone? We immediately think, "Oop," angsties go right up, guard shoots right up, and then immediately we break down the communication, right? Great communication is a meeting of the minds where you lower that guard and you find that common ground. You have to do that by remaining human, in my opinion. So before you're quick to automate something and just push a button and, that's it, never have to touch this lead again, which I think a lot of people do. No offense. Sales Loft, Outreach, there's so many different great cadencing tools out there to connect with people en masse.
They're not great cadencing tools. They are the bane of our life, and they put barriers between seller and buyer.
Okay, what I'll say is from an efficiency standpoint. I understand.
I would push back on that as well, because efficiency is measured not by how many tasks you can undertake and complete, but on the result that you get.
Exactly.
The problem
How much
with
closer
sales
it gets to
and
target.
all of this stuff is that the very thing you're talking about, the human interaction, the building the trust, the building the relationship, the meeting of minds, all of that goes out of the window because you end up getting an email from me which says, just bouncing this to the top of your inbox. Because they've said, here's a template, you can change this to suit your own needs, and people don't. They just use the template as it stands.
Yeah.
So what it does is it says, rather than me trying to form a relationship with Sarah, rather than me listening to what you're saying, rather than me trying to engage you in a dialogue, it absolutely tells you that I have added you to my process.
Mm-hmm.
So for us, we see sales tech in all of its forms, whether that's something which scrapes email addresses from LinkedIn, or something which automates, or something which analyzes the words that you use, like GOM, or something that is any one of these outreach tools, including outreach, but not limited to outreach. Every single one of them puts a barrier between people. And that's what means that often organizations are not able to get anywhere near the relationship that they need to close a sale, because they've sought the shortcut. They've looked for the shortest route between 2 points, assuming that that's the correct answer. And in this instance, it isn't.
Yeah, Adam, you're talking about effectiveness. It's not, these tools are not effective in helping us to achieve the outcome that we want. But Sarah, you talked about something earlier that I thought was just, the whole thing. It's been amazing. I have to talk to you later, but it's been fantastic. I mean, you're saying a lot of things that we say here all the time. I think fundamentally what's happening is that the technology is making the human stuff much, much more important. But that's not really what I want to talk about. You talked about having empathy for the people that you're communicating with. And you talked about the CEO, Rob. I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name, but he's asked this question. CEOs and CFOs need to articulate the story. I guess it's not a question, but a statement. They need to articulate the story to shareholders and prospective shareholders. They need to understand these layers. And as you were talking about it, it made me think about the move, at least in the startup community for a while, was to keep startups private longer, because the pressure on CEOs and CFOs to deliver the numbers in the public market is just unbelievable. It's crazy. And so there's that move and maybe, for CEOs that really want to transform their organizations and take the time to do what is necessary, they have to have a bigger conversation, a conversation with the board about what's necessary. And maybe what we need to do is bring this company private so we're not so beholden to the street, get these systems right, get this going in the right direction, and then go back out there. And anyway, so I guess it's not really a question, but a statement.
You have no idea how much you are preaching to my guts right now. Yeah. So I've got to tell you. And
yeah, when you were talking about it, it immediately in my head, it connected some dots, right? About, new business models. They did this with the new business models, like the platform business models, like they weren't going public because of the complexities of having to spend a bunch of money and, before the revenue was going to come in. Anyway, you just got me thinking about, that piece of the puzzle. And yeah, so thank you.
You're welcome. I've got to tell you, so thank you for touching on that, Lenwood, because honestly, personal overshare, I'm someone that I obviously lead with, like, you're going to hear all the things I think in my head. But the biggest reason I chose to work for the company I currently work for, Bamboo Rose, was just what you touched on, Lenwood. I had the privilege, and this was the first time in my professional career, and I've worked for some pretty cool sounding companies, right? I've worked for Fortune 500 companies. I have built and scaled startups. I have built and scaled my own. This was the first time in my career, other than having worked for myself, in which I truly felt lockstep with the leadership team. I met with my boss, who is the Chief Revenue Officer, Mike Maddie. Shout out to you. When I first met him, the very first thing I asked him, because I believe, again, any good relationship is a true meeting of the minds. It's not just about his agenda. It's not just about my agenda, but how can we break bread together? So one of the questions, because I'm done, I'm nearly 40, guys, like I'm 38, going on 39 in a few months. And one of the questions I've finally grown into myself and realized I have the right to ask is, what do I need to know before I get myself into a bad position? Because I've worked for some really unfortunately poor cultural dumpster fires. And when I interviewed Mike, as much as Mike was interviewing me, I asked him the philosophical question. So this was my question. You ready? I said, Mike, imagine you've only got enough power in your organization to power one of these three engines. We're going to call those engines good, fast, and cheap. Give me what gets the bulk of your power. Where are you fueling your engine? Without moment's hesitation, he said good. Well, again, it's an interview, so I obviously have to QC that answer and take it with a grain of salt because they're trying to attract talent, right? So I now took this several layers deeper, just like we do in sales, guys. I'm a seller. Like, I'm a proud seller. There's no reason why sales has to be a dirty word. We can change the culture so it is coming from a place of true empathy and contribution, in my opinion. So I took my sales process, which is just the continuing evolution of the interview process, and I met with the CEO, Matt Stevens. Again, big shout out to Matt, because honestly, these two gentlemen really sold me. Matt, I asked him the exact same question. Most disarming, most accessible CEO I've ever met. And he said, good without a moment's hesitation. So that, again, grain of salt. I started to QC that by asking for, I ended up connecting with several of their previous direct reports on LinkedIn. And I did interviewing behind the scenes, even though they weren't
Use
interviewing
that social media.
Well done.
Digital download. You got to use it to your advantage. We're building relationships here. We are building community, right? And I went and I started to ask questions to several of their direct reports over the course of their career. These two gentlemen not only have worked together for over 10 plus years, they have such a loyal followership from their sales leaders, from their individual contributors, that so many of them have now come aboard this resurrection that we're building at Bamboo Rose 2.0. Who we've been, they are committed to quality. And these are gentlemen that have really attracted some really exceptional talent. And we're truly, I think, invested in building something bigger than any one individual. We are truly looking to build something of extraordinary delivery to our end consumers and the stakeholders that rely. And I think that that's one of the things we need to start remembering, guys. We're not selling a product. We are truly building a long-term solution that is going to pay dividends if our theory proves to be correct. Because isn't that what selling is we're selling a theory? We have some use cases. We've got some white papers, but we're selling theoretical change. And change is hard. What we're doing is we're trying to ask people to have a little bit of faith in us, to trust us, let us, a little bit behind the curtain of their business, show us all the good, the bad, and the ugly so that we can truly affect positive change for the long-term longevity of their success and build that long-term sticky relationship where we're not a salesperson anymore. We're a trusted advisor. We're a strategic partner in perpetuity. But you're not going to have any of that unless you truly take the time to care about quality, care about something of greater significance, way beyond yourself, way beyond your commission, way beyond the revenue, way beyond the quota. It really has to be, my goodness, am I on fire kind of inspired? Because I know what this is going to do for your business. If I'm right, please trust me enough to allow me to help you get there.
So I want to bring in some comments from the audience, and audience, thank you very much for sharing. From Anna Maria.
It's going ballistic, Rob.
Pardon?
It's going ballistic. Or is that an English?
It absolutely is.
He's preaching to the guts.
Yeah.
You got one life. If you're not passionate about what you do, what in the heck are you doing?
I'm writing that down, Sarah.
Yeah, appreciate you.
Anna Maria shares, I reframe sales as helping people getting to things they really need. It is a shift. And we have from Robert Matson, don't sell me features, show me how you'll make my life better. There's one more I wanted to come back to. This was from earlier. Rob Turl had actually asked a question as we were maybe say debating the validity of automation tools. Rob's question was, digital marketing focus on transactional sales, low touch, whereas solution sales still needs human relationships. What do we think about that?
So I think we got a little bit off topic from where I was going to. I'm sorry, I'm a long-winded talker, guys. To put a button on this, and feel free to disagree with me, how I leverage technology, originally to Tracy's question, which thank you again, by the way. I think that we can utilize tools where a lot of people think they're used as transactional tools. We can actually use those for greater significance than I think we're currently leveraging. Case in point, just about a week and a half ago, we started to roll out outreach in my company. We were not using a cadencing tool. Heck, our company wasn't even going outbound before. So one of the things that a lot of these sellers that hadn't engaged with the software before, they didn't realize they can touch an account once, personalize every single step ahead of deploying it. So it's not just a spray and pray cold email. They've actually taken the time to customize each step of that cadencing process up until such time as we've finally established rapport. So cadencing tools, I think, can be effective if done the right way. if you take the time to touch an account, touch it once from an efficiency standpoint, but really get to know who is the person that you're going to be trying to connect with. Get to know them as closely as you can. This is where you can leverage technology for the greater good. You can go to LinkedIn, you can hear how someone talks about themselves in their own words. How do they care about the world? What are they posting about? What kind of contribution and impact are they looking to leverage with this one voice and this one presence that they've got, right? I think that there's a way that you can look at who that person is, understand who are they, who is their consumer, their community that they're building around themselves, and then come from a place of contribution. As you're building your outreach cadence or sales loft or whichever tool you want to use, you can find a way to say, wow, I got to tell you, I read an article about you in Forbes magazine that just really shifted the way that I think. And I'm actually talking about this on my post today. How do you build genuine connection with someone from cold outreach? Because you can show that I have a meeting of the minds with you. We might never have met before, but I'd be honored if you'd indulge me in a conversation. And I used to say back when I was cold calling, look, yes, I'll be completely transparent that on paper I might have an agenda, but I promise you that's not what I'm leading with. And if you'll allow me, I have an idea that, if right, could put you in such a significantly better place than what you might be able to do by what you're doing today, that if you'll allow me to just give me a few moments, I'm not looking for a lot. I'd love the opportunity to connect with you because I believe in who you are, because I see how much you care about X, Y, and Z thing. And I don't want you to say that from a place of, oh, I'm trying to find value for the sake of finding value. Mean it. I've got a pretty strong BS meter. You want to make sure that when you say something, say it with genuine intent. So when I used to cold call, I used to say, look, I understand. I used to actually help, and I built a pretty successful real estate company at one point. And I used to say when I was cold calling for sale by owners, look, I understand you don't want to work with a broker. I understand that you probably want the most money in your pocket, not mine, yours, because you're counting on that. You're counting on that to get you to wherever it is that you're looking to move to. Upsize, downsize, help your kids go to college. All these great things that unfortunately we don't have in America. Wouldn't universal healthcare and education be wonderful? But Sarah on her soapbox again. All these things that they're counting on that livelihood of that real estate investment to actually pay dividends in somebody's future. So when I used to cold call, I would say, look, I understand that you really don't want me to get a penny off of the proceeds of your sale because that's your life and you're counting on that. What if I could tell you that the average for sale by owner, they end up underselling their house by about 26%? Almost to the point where they're giving their house away and you're being grossly taken advantage of. If I could reframe your thinking and show you a way that not only can I help put a lot more money in your pocket, not mine, yours, and I can also show you how I don't make a single dime unless I prove the value of my work. So I'm guaranteeing the quality you're going to receive. And you don't take a single thing. You don't accept a dang offer unless it's an offer that you like. Would you be willing to meet with me for 5 minutes where I can just show you a little bit of information that you might not have considered before you give your house away? And that's what I do. I think that there's a way that you can come from a place of significant contribution and empathy, where when you build that outbound cadence, you can start to provoke thought leadership in a very sincere, empathetic way, where you are not looking to take advantage of someone. And it's not just, hi, pinging this back to the top of your inbox. Hi, me again. Whack-a-mole, whack-a-mole. What's the quote again, Rob?
Sarah, I've got a question for you.
You know,
Sean.
it goes back to mindset. You talked about that early. You know, what's the mindset of the person when they're, engaging the person that they're attempting to sell to? I have found that taking a co-creation approach or a partnering approach is a great way to put yourself in the frame of mind. And really what got me thinking about that was a conversation I was having with Ed Morrison. And Ed Morrison is a collaboration and innovation expert. And what he said to me is, none of us have lived in a time such as this. We've never lived after a pandemic. We've never had AI before. So articulating to someone that you have the solution based on an environment that we've never lived in, it just rings as, disingenuous.
Right.
Okay. So when we talk about creating something to adapt to this current environment together, it tends to put people in a different frame. When you frame it like it's like the reframing, you talked about that, reframing things. So they're seeing things from a different perspective, I think can be helpful.
I completely agree with you.
Sarah, I've got a question for you. And thank you for your comment about going around and talking to people behind when you're going for an interview. That's going to appear in a blog of mine that's coming soon. So I've got a question for you, which is kind of, we've got Jensen with us. Jensen's 22, right? And isn't talking for old people. All this talking on phones. I mean, it's what old people do. It's not how we communicate nowadays. What do you think, Jensen? Do you talk to people?
Yes, I do. Funnily enough.
Via Snapchat.
Well,
At some point, you're going to have to end up opening the mouth. Yes, you might be doing an awful lot of email, a lot of emojis, a lot of texting, but I guarantee you.
So communication has changed, though, hasn't it, over the last 20 years?
Absolutely. And I think that that's just it. One of the things that I was actually provoking amongst the sellers that I help at Bamboo Rose, I was asking them a question just a week ago, as we were starting to think through who our top 10 persona profiles are. And again, there's that asterisk. We need to make sure we're keeping person inside persona. Sarah off her soapbox. One of the key questions I asked on that is, who is this person? If you're communicating with a CFO, how do they like to be communicated with? When's the last time we asked ourselves that? Why are we just creating a generic outreach sequence for the sake of everyone needs to be communicated with the exact same way? That's not how it works. If you think through the lens of who that person is and, what is their age? Maybe of a different generation, they do prefer a text message. Maybe they do prefer a quick little video email from me rather than me just giving them a call on the phone, because you're exactly right. Different people think differently. And I think that we need to zoom out again, get out of our own lens, get into somebody else's and ask, who is this person? And how do they wish to be communicated with?
I've got a question as well.
Please, Jensen.
So kind of, just thinking how to word it. So what would be your top tip for kind of myself and the audience, kind of to help the recipient understand myself better? So me as a person, if I have a point, I tend to want to kind of blast that point out as quickly as I can, thinking that the recipient is going to understand when 9 times out of 10 they don't, right? Because I'm so focused on trying to get my point across, I'm not actually thinking of the correct words to use, or not just that. In my own head, I understand it, but in someone else's head, it may be a new topic, so they have no idea. So, what would be that top tip that you would give to help the recipient understand what I'm saying?
I think that that's an awesome question, and I think that we started to touch on that. I think Rob, you were the one that said, "Aren't we so quick to?" We're just waiting to hear ourselves talk again. I, me. The world revolves around me, right? Well, of course you think the world revolves around you. It's all you've ever experienced. So my answer, and I think we started to talk on this earlier in the episode, so full circle, I guess. Stop. You got to stop. You got to stop. When in doubt, stop. Are you really making space for the person you're looking to build a relationship with, or are you just looking to hear yourself talk?
But I have a quota to meet. I can't stop.
But we can. Guys, this is one of the things that if I could switch the thinking, everything is choice. Everything is choice. The choice to open our mouth is a choice. The choice not to open our mouth is a choice. The choice to take action on something is a choice. The choice not to take action is an active choice. If we stop ourselves and we go back to what yoga teaches us, that's one of my passion projects. So sometimes I like to reference yoga. If you think back to what yoga really is, it's not a flexible or a fitness practice. It's really a mindfulness technique. It's, am I present in this moment? in this moment, what do I choose to do? So before you want to, put it all out there, and yes, I absolutely understand that there's a time and place for that. Heck, I do it. I now create, little topics on my LinkedIn, because what I want to do in this one life that I've got is I want to give back to something I love. Sales changed my life because for a long time, I was a much younger version of myself, painfully shy, thinking I had nothing of value to contribute in this one life that I've got. And sales changed my life in a way where I knew I could find a way to help someone feel radiant about who they were. We can choose that. We can choose to say, wait a minute, before I open my mouth and I spray and pray all over the place, or I talk at people, what does this person truly need to feel radiant about who they are first, long before I open my mouth? It's then and only then that when you choose how you choose to communicate, again, come from a place of extreme clarity and intentionality, choose how you want to put that message out there.
Wow.
Can I say one quick thing? One quick thing, because when you said that, I was just thinking, like, what if stopping and listening was actually the fastest way to meet your quota?
It is. It was a loaded statement. Fantastic episode again this week. The hour flew by. Thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you to Sarah. Our audience. Of course, thank you to the panelists. This has been the Digital Download, the longest running weekly business talk show on LinkedIn Live. And until next week, have a good day, everybody.
Thank you, Sarah.
Bye, everyone.
Y'all. Have a great day.